Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real today. Some of y'all have been hurt by somebody who walked away like they ain't done a thing wrong. Like they didn't just tear you up inside and leave you standing there with all your emotions bleeding out. You try to understand it. You ask yourself over and over, how can someone do that and act like nothing ever happened? Well, let me break it down for you. One of the most confusing and painful things about dealing with a narcissist is trying to understand how someone can hurt you so deeply and then act like it never even happened. You sit there wondering, do they not see what they've done? Or how can they just move on like that? The truth is, narcissists lack true empathy and emotional accountability. And once you begin to understand this, you'll see why their behavior feels so cold, so detached, and so inhuman. See, empathy is the ability to step into someone else's shoes and feel what they feel. It's what makes us apologize when we've hurt someone. It's what drives us to care, to comfort, and to correct ourselves. But narcissists deep down are disconnected from this basic emotional experience. They might know the right words. They might imitate caring behavior when it benefits them, but they don't feel it the same way you do. Their version of empathy is more like a performance, not a genuine emotional connection. When they hurt you, whether through lies, manipulation, or cruel silence, they don't stop to consider how it affects you. Not really, because in their mind, your feelings aren't as important as protecting their ego. A narcissist's world is centered around themselves, their needs, their image, their convenience. If acknowledging your pain would require them to accept responsibility, they'll choose denial every time. They won't apologize because an apology means admitting fault, and admitting fault threatens the perfect image they have of themselves. That's why even after doing something obviously wrong, they might look at you with a straight face, shrug it off, or even blame you for reacting. It's not just that they lack empathy, it's that they reject emotional accountability altogether. To them, saying, "I was wrong," is a weakness. Taking ownership of the damage they cause feels like losing control. And a narcissist needs control like they need air. So what do? They pretend like it didn't happen. They act normal. They shift the focus. They post on social media like everything's fine. They smile, laugh, go about their day, and leave you in emotional chaos, questioning your own sanity. This isn't accidental. This is part of how they protect their inflated sense of self. If they allowed themselves to feel guilt or remorse, they'd have to confront the truth that they're not perfect, that they caused harm, that they failed to love or respect someone who cared about them. And that truth, that's what they run from. A narcissist survives by building a wall between their actions and the consequences. That wall is built from denial, blame shifting, emotional manipulation, and silence. If you call them out, they'll either gaslight you or disengage. If you cry in front of them, they might roll their eyes or walk away. Why? Because your pain demands something from them they are not willing or even able to give. Genuine human accountability. You might think if I explain it the right way, they'll understand. But you're dealing with someone whose emotional wiring is fundamentally different. You're speaking a language they don't care to learn. And that's where the cycle of confusion and hurt begins. You keep waiting for empathy, expecting a response that will never come. Meanwhile, they keep reinforcing that emotional wall, walking around like everything is fine, while you're carrying the weight of a one-sided emotional war. What makes this even more damaging is that narcissists often know just enough about emotions to fake it. They can pretend to care when they need something from you. They can throw out a half-hearted, "I'm sorry you feel that way," if it helps them get back in your good graces. But those words are hollow. They're tools, not truths. And when the mask slips, when the charm wears off, you're left staring at someone who can hurt you deeply and not even flinch. Understanding that narcissists lack true empathy and emotional accountability won't erase the pain they caused, but it does something important. It helps you stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking, maybe if I had said it differently, or maybe I'm overreacting. You start to see the pattern. You start to realize that their inability to care isn't a reflection of your worth, it's a symptom of who they are. And with that awareness, you begin to break free. One of the most frustrating things about dealing with a narcissist is that they don't just hurt you. They twist the truth so skillfully that you begin to question your own reality. You know what they said, you remember what they did, you recall the pain you felt in that moment, but when you bring it up, they look at you like you're crazy, like you're making it all up. That's because narcissists rewrite reality to suit their ego and avoid blame. They are not interested in truth. They are only interested in control. And if the truth threatens their image or forces them to take responsibility, they'll bend it, erase it, and replace it with something more convenient for them. This behavior is not just manipulation, it's survival to them. Narcissists depend on maintaining an inflated self-image. In their minds, they are the victim, the hero, the misunderstood genius, never the villain. So when a situation arises where they are clearly in the wrong, they can't handle it. Instead of admitting fault, they shift the narrative. They'll say you misunderstood. They'll insist you're too emotional or too sensitive. They'll deny, minimize, or completely change the facts until you start to doubt yourself. You may even begin to wonder if you're the problem. This rewriting of reality is what people often call gaslighting, and narcissists are experts at it. They'll tell you something didn't happen even if you have proof. They'll say they never said that even though you remember their exact words. They'll claim they were joking, that you're overreacting, that you're reading too much into things. And they do it all with such confidence, such calmness, that you begin to second guess what you know to be true. That's not an accident. That's how they keep you off balance. That's how they protect their ego from the uncomfortable truth that they were wrong, that they caused harm, that they acted out of selfishness or cruelty. In their version of events, they are always justified. If they yelled at you, it's because you provoked them. If they betrayed you, it's because you weren't meeting their needs. If they abandoned you, it's because you were too difficult to love. They rewrite the past so that it always ends with them being blameless and you being the one who messed everything up. And the more you try to defend yourself, the more they twist your words until you find yourself apologizing just to keep the peace, even when you know in your heart you didn't do anything wrong. This kind of psychological manipulation is deeply damaging. It makes you question your own memory, your own perception, even your own sanity. You start to think, maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I did take it the wrong way. Maybe I am too much. That's exactly where a narcissist wants you, confused, insecure, and easy to control. As long as you're doubting yourself, you're less likely to stand up to them. As long as they can convince you that your feelings aren't valid, they don't have to deal with the consequences of their behavior. It's important to understand that narcissists aren't interested in resolving conflict in a healthy way. They don't seek understanding or reconciliation. They seek power. And rewriting reality is one of the ways they maintain that power. They need to believe and convince others that they are always in the right. If you challenge their version of the story, they'll either dismiss you, demonize you, or play the victim so convincingly that people actually start to feel sorry for them. Meanwhile, you're left carrying the emotional weight of what really happened with no acknowledgement, no apology, and no validation. This is why arguing with a narcissist often feels like talking in circles. You bring up a specific incident, and somehow the conversation ends up being about your flaws, your tone, your supposed misunderstanding. Nothing gets resolved, and you walk away feeling even worse than before. That's their tactic. They want to blur the lines between truth and fiction until you can't tell the difference anymore. The sad part is narcissists often believe their own rewritten version of events. They convince themselves that what they're saying is true because it's easier than facing the reality of their actions. It's not just lying to you, it's lying to themselves. That's how deeply rooted their need for self-protection is. They would rather live in a fantasy than accept the reality that they hurt someone who loved them. When a narcissist goes silent after causing you pain, it's not because they don't know what they did, it's not because they forgot, and it's definitely not because they're giving you time to heal. Their silence, their cold indifference, their ability to move on as if nothing ever happened, it's all part of a calculated strategy. They know you're hurting. They know you're waiting for an apology, an explanation, or even a simple acknowledgement of what they did. But instead of reaching out, they withdraw. Instead of showing remorse, they give you the cold shoulder. That silence is not empty, it's loud with intention. It's a form of emotional control, and it's one of the most painful weapons in a narcissist's toolbox. When someone truly cares about you and they hurt you, their natural instinct is to reach out to make things right. They feel your pain and want to ease it. But a narcissist is wired differently. They see your emotional reaction not as something to nurture, but as something to use. If you cry, if you express your hurt, if you ask for clarity or comfort, they don't meet you with compassion. They meet you with silence, distance, and cold detachment. Why? Because they know that silence triggers something deep inside you. They know that your mind will start racing, that you'll begin to doubt yourself, wondering if you overreacted, wondering if maybe it was your fault. Their silence forces you to sit alone with your pain while they continue with their lives like your feelings don't even register. This emotional withdrawal is designed to make you feel powerless. It puts you in a position where you're desperately trying to reconnect, to get some sort of reaction, even if it's negative. You may find yourself reaching out, explaining yourself, begging for a conversation, just to break the silence. And the narcissist loves that because now they have the upper hand. Now they control the tempo of the relationship. Now they decide when you get attention and when you don't. It's emotional starvation. They give you a taste of connection, then take it away, leaving you chasing after it, blaming yourself for the distance they created. Indifference is even more cutting. When someone shows you they simply don't care, that your pain means nothing to them, it creates a wound that's hard to describe. It makes you feel invisible, worthless, discarded, and that's exactly the effect a narcissist wants to create. Their indifference sends a message. Your feelings don't affect me. You don't have power here. They might even seem happier, more energetic, more active in front of others, while you're emotionally spiraling behind closed doors. This contrast isn't accidental. It's part of their image control. They want the world to think they're fine, unaffected, even thriving, and they want you to feel abandoned, like your pain is yours alone to carry. The worst part is, this silence and indifference can stretch on for days, weeks, or even months. And during that time, the narcissist doesn't feel the same emotional agony that you do. They don't miss you in the same way. They don't lie awake wondering how you're doing because they don't operate from the same emotional depth. To them, relationships are tools, sources of validation, attention, or convenience. When you stop serving that purpose, or when you challenge them, they cut you off emotionally, sometimes without warning. Not to protect themselves, but to punish you. This kind of emotional manipulation leaves deep scars. It makes you question your worth. It creates anxiety every time there's a disagreement because you've been conditioned to associate conflict with abandonment. You start walking on eggshells, trying not to upset them, trying to keep the peace at all costs, just to avoid the silence you now fear so deeply. That fear gives the narcissist more control. It ensures you'll tolerate more, accept less, and keep coming back, even when it's hurting you. Their silence is not peace, it's punishment. Their indifference is not strength, it's manipulation. And the sooner you recognize that, the sooner you can stop internalizing their emotional neglect as something you deserve. Because no one who truly loves and values you will ever use your pain as a way to control you. Apologizing is something most people learn early in life. You hurt someone, you say you're sorry, not just to fix things, but because you genuinely feel remorse. It's a sign of emotional maturity, a sign that you can recognize when you've caused pain and that you value the person enough to make it right. But for narcissists, apologies don't work that way. In their world, saying I'm sorry is not a sign of growth or strength. It's a sign of weakness. It threatens their carefully crafted image of perfection and control. It requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is something they avoid at all costs. To a narcissist, an apology feels like a loss of power. It feels like admitting failure, like handing over control to someone else. They believe that if they apologize, they're giving you emotional leverage over them. And that is something they cannot allow. They must always appear superior, untouchable, above reproach. In their mind, if they admit they were wrong, even for a moment, it cracks the mask they've built, the one that tells the world they're flawless, misunderstood, or always justified. So instead of saying, I was wrong, they shift the blame. Instead of taking responsibility, they find ways to deflect it back onto you. They may twist the situation to make you feel like you provoked them. They might turn the conversation into a full-blown argument just to avoid facing the original issue. Sometimes they'll act like nothing happened at all, moving on without a word, hoping you'll drop it and move forward. And if you bring it up again, they act annoyed, like you're the one holding on to things for too long. It's all part of the game. Deny, distract, and deflect, anything to avoid those three simple words, I am sorry. Even when a narcissist does apologize, it's rarely sincere. It's often surface level, vague, or conditional. They'll say things like, I'm sorry you feel that way, which is not an apology for what they did, but a subtle way of blaming you for how you reacted. Or they'll apologize just enough to stop you from leaving, to reset the dynamic, to keep you from calling them out publicly. But deep down, they don't feel true regret. They're not sorry for the pain they cause. They're sorry for the consequences they might face because of it. To understand why narcissists fear apologizing, you have to understand how deeply rooted their insecurity is. Beneath all the arrogance and bravado is a fragile ego that cannot handle criticism, even if it's justified. They live in fear of being exposed, of being seen as flawed or inadequate. So instead of confronting their mistakes, they rewrite the story. They surround themselves with people who won't challenge them, and they avoid any situation where they might be held accountable. That's why even the smallest apology feels threatening. It shakes the illusion of superiority they've worked so hard to maintain. This mindset is not just frustrating for the people around them, it's deeply harmful. When someone never takes responsibility for their actions, it leaves others carrying all the emotional weight. You're left questioning your feelings, minimizing your pain, and wondering if you're asking for too much. You may even start apologizing on their behalf just to keep the peace. Over time, this erodes your sense of self-worth. You begin to believe that your hurt doesn't matter, that your boundaries are negotiable, that love means accepting less than you deserve. But the truth is, refusing to apologize isn't a show of strength. It's emotional cowardice. It's a refusal to grow, to learn, to evolve as a human being. Real strength is being able to say, I hurt you and I take responsibility for that. Real strength is facing discomfort to repair the damage you've done. But a narcissist doesn't want to grow, they want to dominate. They want relationships where they're never questioned, never challenged, never made to look less than perfect. And that's why they avoid apologies, not because they don't understand the concept, but because they've chosen ego over empathy every single time. There's something particularly damaging about someone who wounds you and then expects you to move on without ever acknowledging the pain they've caused. Narcissists are notorious for this. They expect forgiveness as if it's automatic, as if it's owed to them, regardless of the damage they've done. And what's even more painful is that they expect this forgiveness without offering any real accountability. They don't want to talk about what happened. They don't want to take ownership, and they certainly don't want to make it right. What they want is for you to sweep it under the rug, act like nothing happened, and get back to making them feel comfortable. To them, forgiveness is a shortcut to avoid the consequences of their actions. When you bring up how they've hurt you, they often respond with irritation or indifference. You might hear things like, why are you still bringing that up? Or, I thought we were past that. They might even accuse you of being negative, overly emotional, or dramatic, anything to make the conversation about your reaction instead of their behavior. They don't want to sit with the discomfort of having to see themselves as the cause of your pain. They'd rather label your response as the problem than admit their role in the situation. And yet, at the same time, they expect to be forgiven. They expect closeness, trust, and affection to be restored on demand, as if you owe it to them simply because they've decided it's time to move on. This kind of expectation is not only unfair, it's emotionally exhausting. It puts you in a position where you feel guilty for wanting basic things like honesty, remorse, or an apology. Over time, you may even start to internalize this dynamic, believing that maybe you are too sensitive, that maybe your boundaries are unreasonable, that perhaps forgiveness means letting go without ever being heard. But real forgiveness can't happen in the absence of accountability. Real healing requires acknowledgement, responsibility, and change. It requires the person who hurt you to show that they understand what they did and are committed to doing better. Narcissists want none of that. They want the benefits of forgiveness without doing any of the emotional work to earn it. They view your forgiveness as a reset button, something they can push whenever it suits them. Not because they've changed, but because they want access to you again. They want your energy, your attention, your support, but they don't want to discuss the damage they left behind. If you refuse to forgive them on their terms, they may even turn the tables and accuse you of holding a grudge or being unforgiving. They might say things like, you're supposed to love me unconditionally, or if you really cared, you'd let it go. They use guilt and emotional manipulation to bypass accountability, framing your need for closure as some kind of flaw in your character. This manipulation extends even further when they bring others into the narrative. They might play the victim, painting you as unforgiving or bitter to friends, family, or mutual acquaintances. This is especially hurtful because now you're not only dealing with unaddressed pain, but also with the added burden of being misunderstood or misrepresented by people who don't know the full story. Meanwhile, the narcissist continues on, avoiding accountability while expecting everyone around them to move on as though nothing ever happened. Forgiveness to a narcissist isn't about repairing the relationship. It's about regaining control. It's about getting back to the status quo where they're comfortable and unchallenged. And if you do offer forgiveness without demanding accountability, it only reinforces their behavior. They learn that they can hurt you, ignore your pain, and still have access to your life. It teaches them that their actions have no lasting consequences, that they don't have to change, and that you will always be the one to bend, to break, to fix things. That's the cruel irony in all of this. The more compassionate and understanding you are, the more they take advantage of it. Your desire for peace is used against you. Your willingness to forgive becomes a tool in their hands, not a bridge toward healing. And that's why recognizing this pattern is so important. Because true forgiveness should never come at the cost of your self-respect, your dignity, or your emotional well-being. When someone hurts you deeply, the natural human response is to feel empathy, an emotional pull that makes you want to comfort the person you've wounded, to make things right, to ease their suffering. But with narcissists, that instinct is often missing. They lack true empathy, not because they don't understand what pain is, but because they don't connect to your pain in a meaningful way. They can witness your tears, hear the tremble in your voice, even see you break down completely and still feel nothing that moves them to genuine remorse or concern. That's the most disorienting part. You're in agony and they're unmoved. You're emotionally bleeding and they're looking at you like it's not their problem. It's not that they don't know they hurt you. In fact, sometimes they hurt you intentionally. What they lack is the emotional depth to truly care about what you're experiencing unless it somehow affects them directly. Your pain only matters to them if it disrupts their comfort, threatens their image, or damages their control over the situation. If none of that is at risk, they will often carry on as if nothing happened. That's why they can walk away so easily, act indifferent after emotional destruction, or even mock your sensitivity. They don't see your hurt as something real to attend to. They see it as noise, drama, or manipulation, even when it's raw and sincere. This emotional emptiness doesn't mean they're incapable of mimicking empathy. In fact, some narcissists are skilled at performing emotions when it serves them. They might offer a few comforting words, feign concern, or temporarily play the role of the caring partner, friend, or family member. But these moments are usually short-lived and transactional. They're not driven by a genuine connection to your emotional experience. They're driven by a need to manage their image, avoid consequences, or maintain their influence over you. As soon as they feel secure again, that brief flash of empathy vanishes, and you're left confused, wondering if you imagined it all. Because they lack deep empathy, narcissists struggle to validate your emotions. They see your reactions as exaggerations or as personal attacks. Instead of saying, I understand why that hurt you, they might say, you're always so dramatic, or you're too emotional. This dismissiveness isn't accidental. It's how they protect themselves from facing the impact of their actions. It's easier for them to invalidate your feelings than it is to reflect on how their behavior might have caused harm. They often treat emotional vulnerability as a weakness and view any request for emotional support as a burden or a threat to their superiority. This lack of empathy also explains why narcissists often repeat the same harmful behaviors. They don't internalize the lessons that come from witnessing another person's pain. Most people grow and evolve by recognizing how their actions affect others, but narcissists don't process the world that way. They see relationships in terms of utility, what you provide, how you make them feel, how much you feed their ego. If showing care and compassion doesn't serve a purpose for them, they won't bother. They simply move past your pain like it's an inconvenient detail in a story they're not really invested in. One of the most damaging outcomes of being close to someone like this is the slow erosion of your own emotional confidence. Over time, you begin to question whether your feelings are valid. You wonder if you're asking too much just by needing empathy, understanding, or emotional connection. And the truth is, you're not. You're asking for the bare minimum of what any healthy, respectful relationship should offer. But when you're with someone who lacks empathy, those basic needs go unmet, and you're left emotionally starving in a dynamic that should be nurturing. The absence of empathy doesn't just mean they don't feel bad when they hurt you. It means they don't feel with you at all. They stay detached, distant, emotionally unavailable. You may be screaming for connection while they sit quietly unaffected. And eventually you realize you're the only one in the relationship doing the emotional work, feeling the weight, caring deeply. That realization is painful, but is also freeing. Because once you understand that their lack of empathy isn't about your worth, but about their emotional limitations, you can stop blaming yourself for not being able to reach someone who never intended to meet you there in the first place.